Well, good afternoon and welcome to the second installment of our business leadership series here at Eastern Washington University this spring. I won't forget to introduce myself this time as I did a month ago. My name is Patrick Jones, and I run something on this campus, called the Institute for Public Policy and Economics, and we're teaming up with the business school to present this series to you. And we hope you'll enjoy tonight's speaker. I certainly have heard her speak before, and I think you will enjoy it. I just wanted to mention we are all Eagles at Eastern, wearing lapel pins here saying that, but we couldn't do this without a sponsor, and that sponsor is Washington Trust. Is there anybody from the bank here today? No? Well, in absentia, who knows, they may be looking in online. Can we give them a round of applause for sponsoring this series? So for those of you who have been here before, I'm going to be a little repetitive, but I just wanted to say what the goals are of tonight and the other talks we've had. First of all, we want to be able to learn and listen from a successful Spokane business person, how they got there, what they do now, and what they might do in the future. We also want you to walk away from here being a little inspired, if not more than a little inspired, by what our speaker basically says about their journey through the world of business. And then we want you to end up ultimately by having some fun. And part of that is asking questions. And so we're allotting a bit of time for that. All our speakers to date have been very approachable, and I know that Michelle Hege is not of any different sorts. So we're going to start with her talk. We're going to have Q&A that'll be moderated by Professor Azaru Davari. I know I didn't get that right. Arazu Davari, Professor of Marketing here at the university. And then we'll finish with mingle time and food and drink. So before I turn it over to Michelle, I just want to acknowledge that we've got a few VIPs here from the university. And the first I'd like to point out is our president, Dr. Sherry McMahon. And then we have our provost, Dr. John Anderson, academic officer. And our relatively new, now maybe not so new, Dean of the College of Professional Programs, Dr. Osman Ostergut. Osman. So I prevailed upon Provost Anderson to give a couple remarks about what Eastern is doing right now in the field of education. In 2 minutes or less, he's going to tell you some pretty exciting things. So, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, Patrick. Also recognize Dean David Bowman sitting in the corner there. He's hiding. Eastern was founded as a teaching college, as a teaching university, and over the years has had a few evolutions. But Eastern originally was designed and as a regional comprehensive, and that is, or has evolved into, a regional comprehensive. And if you think about what regional comprehensive universities are, regional comprehensive universities are started for people, run by the people, to serve the needs of the region and its people. And at Eastern, we are proud about being the region's polytechnic, because we understand the impact that our university has in a region to fill the workforce needs. Now, for us, that means hands-on and applied learning, making sure that we are taking that which is learned in a classroom and brought forward into the world and into the community, because learning that theory and content is important. And importanter, thank you for the three of you, is being able to apply that theory and content to practice, because we know that it is not just about preparing good students, but preparing the students for that workforce that powers our region. We are the talent pipeline for this. This is built deep into the core of our strategic plan. One of our core pillars is that regional impact because we are part of this region. We live synergistically with it. We draw from the region. We give back to the region. We ask, what does our workforce need? And we develop those skills to deliver back that workforce to you. And that is what makes Eastern unique. Nobody does what Eastern does in this part of the state. There's another university a little farther down the road, shall remain nameless. Most of their students come from the west side of the state. There's another regional comprehensive about in the middle portion of the state. Most of their students come from the west part of the state. There's a couple of private institutions. Most of them import their talent and export their talent. We import our community talent and export back to our community. And it is events like today that are really important for you all to hear from our community members about the impact that Eastern has had on them and how you can learn from them. I implore you, please take advantage of the Q&A at the end. You're going to learn a lot from Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Anderson. It's not often that I have to pull the mic down. I was going to give you some detail about Michelle Hege's background and then realized that that detail is part of her story and prevailed upon her to don't be bashful about telling her personal story as well. So I'll just say that Michelle Hege is widely respected for all the work that she and her firm does in so many different communities, not just in Spokane, but across the state. I'm really pleased that I was able to twist her arm to come and be a part of this series. Maybe you saw this, or maybe I can't recall, Lorna, whether this was in our advertising of the program that Michelle is an Eastern grad. Did we put that in there? Okay, so she's an Eagle. Even though she started in a place in Walla Walla, but she came to Eastern for her master's degree in communications. Not in her slides, and certainly not on the program, is that her son, Caden, is also an Eagle. And Caden, are you here? No? There he is. All right. It's not often that mom and son appear in the same room at an event like this. So I'm glad you're able to make it and hear your mother. And apparently Caden is following his dad, Rick's footsteps, who, by the way, is very unique in Spokane in his business. He runs a money management firm that specializes in small cap stocks. So I don't know if Rick is here. No? Oh, too bad. In Portland, okay. Well, without any further ado, let me give you and let us all give Michelle Hege a warm Eagle welcome. And she will talk to us about what is now known as DH, but didn't start out that way.
Thank you, Patrick. Oh, the mic got turned on. It's just like magic. Good evening, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be here today as a proud Eagle. It's always great to be able to talk to students and faculty, and I've really been looking forward to this and looking forward to also having my son here and continuing the tradition, the Eagle tradition in our own family. So it's pretty special. And I was wondering, they may be otherwise engaged, but do we have any seniors here? All right, awesome. I want you to know I see you, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own journey, educational journey, as we begin too. So that'll be fun to start out with. So as Patrick mentioned, I started my college career in liberal arts and majored in English, graduated and realized I was really not qualified for the workforce, and had the great good fortune to discover the master's in organizational communications here at Eastern. And I started my degree here. And like many people who go to Eastern, I had to work. So I worked during the day and I went to class at night. And I really credit my Eastern experience in that master's degree as shaping my career. When I graduated with a BA, I did not have a plan. And the students I meet today are light years ahead. You know more about your career options. You do internships with regularity. You are so organized and strategic. And I'll just admit to you, I was not that student. I knew that I wanted to have a great career. I didn't know what that great career was going to be. And as I was walking into the building, I had that moment of, this is your life with professors that I'd had. There are some past clients in the room. There are people I went to grad school with. But I do want to talk about Jeff Stafford, who's in the audience tonight and was my advisor. As a very young, right? A very young professor back in the 90s when we worked together. And Jeff, like many professors here at Eastern, was very well connected in the community and had a consulting practice. And he used graduate students in his consulting practice. And so I got to work with Jeff on several projects. And I realized, oh, this is what I want to do. So Jeff really helped me find what my passion was, and that I didn't have the words for it at the time, but that I wanted to be a consultant, and that I wanted to be a consultant in communications. So so thank you to Jeff and to Eastern for really shaping my early career. So as I said, I didn't have a plan. What career? People would ask me, do you want to teach? And I knew that there was more out there for me to discover. And so while I was, when I graduated from Whitman, it was during a recession. And when I was coming to class at Eastern at night, I was working at Nordstrom. And I, desperately wanted a real job. And my first real job was with a small arts nonprofit. And I think students today are often very concerned about having the perfect first job. And I'm here to tell you, any first job is a great first job because of the experience that you gain. So working for a small arts nonprofit, I learned how to I was doing their books. I was selling tickets to concerts. I was working with musicians, but I was learning how, in hindsight, how to run a small business, how to run a small organization. And it was invaluable experience. I then went to work for what is now Primera, and went to work for a person who would become very important in my professional career, Cher DeSatel, who later was a boss and a business partner and a dear friend. And when she left the company, I was very sad. She'd been such a mentor to me, and I said, please, when you and Jim, our founder of our company, when you and Jim need help, will you call me? And about a year later, she did. And I joined what was then DeSatel Communications and Marketing as their first employee. And that was 27 years ago. So I want to pause before I talk about our company and just say a few things for students. And I touched on this a little bit already, but one of the most important things that you can do while you're in school is to do internships or volunteer, really any kind of experience in a workplace, not only to learn what it's like, but also to learn what you like. So I always tell students that I'm meeting with that is such a valuable experience. And it's such a valuable experience to try different kinds of settings too, right? Big company, small company, private sector, public sector. It's great to experience all of those different kinds of environments. All work experience is good at work experience. Like I said, I got to start in retail. I love on resumes to see restaurant work and retail work, because do you know what it means? It means that people have learned how to problem solve. It means they've had to learn how to think on their feet, how to deal with the public, how to deliver a good experience. And those are such important business skills. And then using informational interviews. Whenever I have a student reach out to me and say, hey, would you meet with me? Or could I come by the office? Or could I meet with someone in your design department or your digital department? I never say no. I did that, right? And we as professionals want to pay that forward. So take us up on that and definitely come to see us. I also just wanted to say a couple of things about being an employer and someone who's hired a lot of people over the years, what we look for. And you'll see on this list that it doesn't anywhere say communication skills. And yes, I expect that people who come to work for our company will have strong communication skills. But I really think it's some of the intangibles that when I think about who makes a fabulous employee in our setting, it's these kinds of things. It's people who are curious and who are lifelong learners. It's people who have a can-do attitude and are happy to put their hand up and jump into a project at the office. It's people who are great problem solvers, who look at a challenge and before coming to you and saying, oh, I'm struggling with this, think about some solutions and come to you and say, I'm struggling with this and here's an idea, what do you think? It's people who are proactive, right? Who are looking around for the next thing that needs to be done, a problem that needs to be solved. And they're reliable, right? They're showing up every day with that spirit and in that mode. And so those are all qualities that I think as students make you successful students, that it will also make you successful employees and business leaders. We talk in our company about a growth mindset, right? And really what that means is that you don't look at a challenge as a problem. You look at a challenge as an opportunity, something that you can lean into, something that you can even have fun solving. And so we really look for people who have that growth mindset. And then I will tell you, I think the number one thing that helped me as I grew in my career was really a desire to see my organization succeed. And some days that meant answering the phone. Some days it meant cleaning the kitchen. Some days it meant doing something I was a little bit scared to try. But I always wanted to make our business successful, and I was looking at everything with that orientation. And when I reflect on my own career and how did I progress, I really think it's that is the number one thing. It wasn't intelligence or a particular skill. It was really an orientation about helping my organization succeed. So Michelle Hege, DH, is a communications and creative agency, and we specialize in what we call the social impact space. And I'm going to unpack that for you and talk about what that means. But we are a proud Spokane-founded company, and I did want to tell you the story of our founding. Because it involves people in this room. It involves Jeff Stafford. It involves Eastern as a through line. And so, so this is that story. This is Jim and Cher Dissatel. And Jim is our founder of our agency. He passed away just about a year ago, and his wife, Cher, joined him in the business, as I said, in the early days. And I used this photo of them. Some of you might recognize this, the Trapper Creek Bar at Elkins at Priest Lake, which was one of Jim's very favorite places. And he and Cher sketched out a business plan on a bar napkin. And on that bar napkin, they said, we want to start a communications agency in Spokane. We see an opportunity in that market, and we want to pull together what Jim termed a team of zealots. And what he meant by using that word was a team of people who would go the extra mile, a team of people who would think creatively, energetically, who would throw themselves into a client's issue or opportunity and would achieve excellence. And so that was his vision from the beginning. I met both Cher and Jim through Jeff. We were all students and graduates eventually of the MSc program here at Eastern. And I interviewed Cher for my thesis. That was how I first met her. She hired me at a previous job, and then I ended up having the great pleasure to work for them. And then eventually they offered me and some of my colleagues shares in the company, and over time we purchased the company from Jim and Cher. So that's a great Spokane entrepreneurial story. In 2022, we bought a Seattle agency, Nihus Communications, wonderful small boutique public relations agency in Seattle, and we're able to extend our office over there. And so now we have, I guess I should go to this next slide, a fabulous team. This is our team. There's 48 DHers today, and we represent all the disciplines that you might think of as a part of an integrated communications agency. We have digital specialists, we have designers, web designers, we have media buyers, we have digital marketing experts, we have, of course, operations team, accountants, and HR professionals, and talented strategists of every type. And one of the things I did in our Slack channel yesterday was to ask people to list their majors, because I realized, I know, of course, we have a lot of advertising, a lot of public relations, a lot of marketing majors, but I knew we had a pretty diverse group. And so in addition to those, we have business administration majors, journalism majors, psychology, public health, political science, even theater. So for students here tonight, there's also a lot of ways into an industry like ours, and it doesn't have to be a marketing degree. And I think having the diversity of all of those different disciplines is something that really makes the agency strong. So I'll tell you just a little bit more about DH. This is a picture of our Seattle office, and if you've been to Pike Street Market, next time you're there, you can look for our logo in the windows right at First and Pike. This office has really enabled us to be the state's really only true statewide communications agency, in that we have a large team in Spokane and a large team in Seattle with business relationships, elected leader relationships, and deep community knowledge in both of those markets. Most agencies in our state, of course, are headquartered in Seattle, and their people are mostly based in Seattle. So this really gives us an advantage as we do work around the state, because of the depth of relationships and knowledge we have. We also do work outside of the Pacific Northwest, particularly in some of our specialties that we've just built a reputation for over time. We're members of an independent global network of independently owned agencies like us, and that gives us reach into other markets in the United States and globally. And then a few more things. Because we're working in social impact, we are very community rooted, I would say. And what that means is we're often tasked with mounting campaigns for a variety of different audiences, many of whom are underrepresented audiences or marginalized audiences in our state. And because of that, we have built relationships and collaborations with community-based organizations all across the state, and we're very proud of that. And we take an equity-centered approach, which really just means that we believe that the people who are the closest to a problem have the answers to that problem, and that if we center their experience, their wisdom, their expertise, we are going to be able to achieve better outcomes. So that's a little bit about how we approach our work. This is a few of our clients. We work in the public and the private sectors. We work in public health, energy, education, economic vitality, transportation. And we do a lot of the things you might think that a communications agency does, like this list of services. And then we combine that as a social impact agency with specific expertise in social change marketing, which is also called behavior change marketing, right? We're not usually seeking to sell a product. We're actually seeking to change hearts and minds and to change behaviors, which I would assert is actually more difficult. And so takes a different kind of approach. And then, as I mentioned, we're very proud of the fact that this work has allowed us to partner with community-based organizations, or CBOs, across the state. And as a part of our state's COVID response in the pandemic, we built a network of over 200 organizations who we helped to fund and helped to partner with to reach their unique audiences with timely information, with in-language tools, with culturally relevant communication. So that's part of the expertise that we bring our clients. So what is social change marketing or behavior change marketing? As I mentioned, we're often using the tools you would think of: advertising, public relations, community engagement, events, influencer campaigns. But we're doing it in a different way. We're seeking to influence behaviors that drive healthy communities. We're seeking to achieve outcomes in public health, in economic development. We're seeking to shape social norms. And I'll give you an example of a few of our campaigns so that you can see a little bit about how does that really come to life. For the communication nerds in the audience, I threw in a little theory. We do use that kind of spectrum or journey. If you think of a consumer journey, we are starting at that pre-contemplation stage where people might or might not understand the issue that we're seeking to communicate about. And we're really following people through that journey with: what do they need? Are there barriers that are keeping them from this information or from action? How do we address those barriers? What are the resources they need? Do they have the right kinds of tools? Do they have the right kinds of guidance? And so we're following them in that journey and mapping what do they need at each stage. And then we're doing that from an equity-centered approach. And I talked about that a little bit, but I like the phrase that people on our team use, which helps to sum it up, which is nothing about me without me. So this is the idea that people closest to the problem have the answers, and that we shouldn't be telling people what to do. We should be inviting them in and co-creating communication campaigns with them in partnership. And we do that by going by using some key principles. We bring audiences in to share and shift power. We are really about creating strengths-based approach. So we're looking at the assets in a community. How do we build on that? We're not preaching to people. We're not shaking our finger at people, but we're really using ideas rooted in community wisdom. We're working to undo harmful narratives that might exist in the marketplace. We are being mindful of bias that we might bring to issues. And then we're listening. We are approaching campaigns in the spirit of we are learning, and we never have all the answers. So that's part of our journey as consultants, is to learn together. And we use what we call a socio-ecological framework. That really means we're looking at the context of what people have all around them in their lives. We understand that people don't consume information in a vacuum, but that they are they're in a dynamic environment. So I wanted to share just a few quick campaign examples for you to show you a little bit about how this work comes to life. Friends for Life is our state's campaign that focuses on fentanyl awareness. And this campaign got started a couple years ago when the opioid crisis really started shifting to a fentanyl crisis. And this campaign has two goals. One goal is to reduce overdose deaths. And if you're news consumers, you know that that's not only been a Washington state problem, it's been a really critical national problem. And the second goal was to prevent exposure to illicit fentanyl and to get information, particularly to young people who the state data was showing were starting to experience overdoses in a way that we hadn't seen before. So what we did with this campaign was really to focus on those two audiences, a prevention audience where we're getting information into schools and getting information to parents to have conversations. And then we're also addressing a harm reduction or overdose reduction strategy, which is naloxone, right? So getting information out to people about how to use naloxone and that they should carry naloxone. And I just wanted to share a couple of key insights that came out of this work. In our research, what we found was that young adults didn't have all the information they needed about illicit fentanyl and what was happening to the drug supply. They underestimated their own risk for coming into contact with it, but they cared deeply and maybe cared more about keeping their friends safe than they did about themselves. And we used that idea to build this campaign, Friends for Life, which really focuses on the concept of what can you do as a good friend to keep your community safe. And the design that was used in this you can see looks different from what you often see in public education campaigns. It almost has kind of a summer camp vibe, and that was very intentional to make this information approachable, to lead with empathy, to be relatable, and to use this kind of illustrative, friendly kind of approach in the artwork. And then the other thing that we know about behavior change campaigns is that scare tactics don't work. And the research is very clear on that. And so what we're really doing, again, is using that strength-based approach and a social norming approach to really frame what is the positive action that you can take. And in this case, it was education and it was naloxone use. A second example that I wanted to share was a campaign that our team's really proud of. It's called Native and Strong. It's a suicide prevention campaign designed for tribal communities in Washington state. Our founder, Jim DeSatel, was an enrolled member of the Colville tribe. And so as our agency got started and as we grew, we had a lot of relationships because of Jim with tribes around the state. And that has informed our work and has led to some great partnerships that we've maintained through today. And of course, the challenge that in this case, the Washington State Department of Health was facing was that Native American and Alaska Native individuals in our state share a disproportionate risk to suicide. And we really wanted to, again, take a strengths-based approach and develop a campaign that tribes would lead and utilize in their own communities. And in this case, the key insight that came out of this work was the power of culture and identity, and that in tribal communities, that is really the center of everything, and that there's real power in engaging community around cultural ideas. And so what our team did was to go out and partner with Native artists around Washington state. And we funded a series of projects where there was original art that was created. And in the previous picture, you saw canoe. One of the projects was canoe making. And we partnered with a Native American filmmaker, photographers, and artists to bring these art projects and the process of making the art to life. And that became the media buy. And it became the resources that were used in tribal communities around the state. And it focused on the power of culture and engaging community members in activities that we knew were really positive protective factors for mental health. One last one, something totally different that I'll share, is a what we called the Walker Roller campaign, and this was for Spokane Traffic Safety Organization that was facing a challenge that's actually still in the news right now, which is a real increase in pedestrian and bicyclist crashes and deaths in Spokane. And they were looking at data specific to 3 neighborhoods that they really wanted to focus on in Hilliard, in Millwood, and in East Central Spokane. And so this campaign, which is called Spokane Shares the Road, that's the name of the URL, was developed around a key insight of using an illustrative approach and humor to draw people into information, and not have it feel, preachy, like just follow the law, but to present information in a way that people could find relatable and would remind people about safety tips, for example, for bicyclists and for pedestrians, about how to be seen and about how to stay safe. And this approach on the website, what we found was that it would keep people engaged and scroll, and they would consume more of the information and tips because these fun illustrated animals would engage in different movements on the site, and we'd provide different kind of little, if you clicked on things, little interesting anecdotes and stories that would pop up. We also recognized that there were a lot of Spanish speakers in these neighborhoods, and so we wanted to ensure that their needs were met. We ended up partnering with 2 CBOs here in Spokane who serve the Latinx community, and they helped us, and we have native Spanish speakers on our team, and together they ensured that the language and the concepts that we were presenting, terminology, were culturally relevant and landed. And frankly, it's not always as easy as just translating campaigns. You really need to co-create to ensure that those the messages and imagery and messaging strategy are appropriate for your audiences. And in this ad buy, one of the things we did, because it was so neighborhood specific, is we used yard signs. And we got residents in those neighborhoods to put yard signs in their yards, businesses to put up posters and signs in their businesses. And then we combined that with a digital buy and billboards at key intersections around those neighborhoods. So those are a few examples of how social impact campaigns look different from maybe traditional advertising campaigns that you've seen, and a little bit about how some of those ideas that I talked about come to life. And then before I end the presentation, I also was just thinking, probably as you are too, that we're in an extraordinary moment in time right now in our country and facing a lot of challenges. And one of the things that I believe and that I've learned through my career is that when you look at leadership in organizations, that how organizations communicate is one of the most important ways that they exhibit or don't exhibit leadership. And so we're having a lot of conversations with our clients right now. We're having a lot of conversations with colleagues about how are leading organizations showing up in this moment. And I don't need to tell people in this room that businesses, universities, nonprofits, government entities are all facing really extensive challenges. And so I want to plant a few seeds, and then we can talk more about this in Q&A. It would be fun. But one of the things that we're talking a lot about right now is the importance of values and mission. And that organizations who are sending strong messages right now are really connecting to what they believe in and what is true for their organization, and that they are leading with that. They're being less reactive and more strengths-based, frankly, and talking about the importance and their commitment to their values in this moment. I would also say that this is a leadership moment where listening has never been more important. And so, we're having conversations with clients about the fact that in times of change and in times of uncertainty, listening is sometimes more important than talking. Understanding where your audiences are, what concerns are on their mind, what they're dealing with, how things are affecting them, and understanding that in your community, in your context. And so that idea of in times of change, it's important to communicate more, it's important to engage more and listen more and be strategic in that. And then lastly, it's important to be conveying a point of view right now. And I think, I'm of course, a student of how organizations do this. And I think we have a fascinating case study brewing with Costco and Target right now. And maybe some of you have been watching that, but we have an example in a Washington-based company, Costco, who came out early and said, these are our values. Our ethos is do the right thing. We are not backing away from DEI. We are doubling down on our commitment. We are doubling down on our commitment to our employees and our customers, and they're out in front leading on that issue. We're seeing activists do buy-ins around Costco's around the country where they're going to spend their money in a strategic way with Costco. Costco's numbers are up. And then we're contrasting that with Target, which was really a company that came out early after George Floyd's murder in a strong way with a lot of strong programs that they've now left. And they are experiencing consumer backlash. Their stock is at a 5-year low. They are experiencing a downtrend in foot traffic. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I just think that there's some really good examples right now of how different companies are approaching communicating. And we're counseling clients to think 10 years ahead, right? To think we're in the long, as employers, as companies, as universities, we play the long game, right? We're in this for the next decade, the next 20 years, the next 30 years. So I think it's a moment where history will look back and we'll have a clear view of who led in this moment and who didn't. And so that's a reminder that we're giving people, because I think in the moment, it can feel like you have to be reactionary. And so our advice to clients is to think about the long game and think about centering your values. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Patrick.
Michelle, I thought I knew what you did. That was just outstanding. And I'm sure that's just a slice of all the different projects that you are now engaged in at DH, right?
Yes, a very small slice.
All right. Well, Professor Davari, why don't we come up and we'll start the Q&A. And as we typically do, she has some planted questions. And then we'd definitely like to see some hands go up after those questions. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a wonderful presentation, as I was expecting. And I'm sure our audience, especially our business and marketing students, have enjoyed it a lot too, and they have learned a lot. You have touched most of the topics that I was planning to ask, but I hope you can give us a little bit, detailed personal information about specifically about your career journey. You mentioned the decisions you made and you believe helped you through your career journey. But for students who are just starting out, what would be, some of the key decisions looking back you think helped you a lot? And do you have any regrets of any of the decisions you made? And now looking back, you would be like, oh, I hope I wouldn't have done that before.
Yeah. When I think back to being, brand new and looking for a job, I had this urgency of like, I've got to get the corporate job. I've got to get the professional job. And I think in some ways I felt like a failure for not being able to get that right out of school. And when I reflect on it, like I mentioned, I think the early jobs I had and like working for a little arts nonprofit was actually perfect. it was, it allowed me, because they were small, I got to do everything. And, in a big company, of course, you never get to do that. You do a little slice of something. And I think that it also helped me develop kind of a resiliency because, there would be, big problems all the time that seemed kind of insurmountable, and you would just learn how to cope with that, and sometimes high stakes things. And again, I think if my first job had been at a big agency or in a big company, I wouldn't have had that, right? I wouldn't have had that pressure on my shoulders. And so when I look back, I think that was really a gift. And I think that those early jobs, like, nothing is forever, right? And to get into a workplace and spend a couple of years building skills, getting experience, building relationships is a tremendous way to start.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So kind of related to the previous questions, today, if you're hiring a recent graduate for marketing, PR, advertising positions, what are the key skills that you look for? You mentioned some of them in your slides, but do you think comparing the skills that you look for today compared to, let's say, a decade ago when maybe AI was not a huge thing,
Yeah.
are there differences in hard and soft skills in people who you're hiring these days compared to before?
Yeah, yeah. I think in our business, soft skills are so important. And I have come to feel over the years that, yes, I want you to have done an internship. I want you to bring some kind of practical experience. It's really helpful for me if I'm hiring an account person. You've done all the kinds of communication writing to some degree, right? You know how to write web copy. You know how to manage social media. Like those things are those are kind of barriers to entry, right? Like, you have to be able to do those things. But now I pay a lot more attention to the soft skills and how people think, how they problem solve, what their orientation is, that kind of idea of people who want to be a part of an enterprise and want to help it succeed kind of no matter what, and don't get stuck in like, well, but my job is this and what I want from the job is this. And I think in my estimation, it's like if your orientation is how can I help this organization and be a part of its success, the return will be immeasurable, right? Because you will make yourself indispensable to that organization. And so I think that also the people skills, right? A lot of our business now for everybody is done on Zoom or on Teams, right? And so there's this skill set of being able to operate in that environment, but also being able to build a relationship, walk into a room and introduce yourself to people. And what I have found is that students coming out of the pandemic sometimes haven't had the opportunity to do those things, right? And so that's a really important ability that we're looking for, or at least an openness to it. But I can train people on hard skills. I can train people on software. I can train people on our processes. I can train people. I can help people become better writers. But some of those intangibles about their orientation, their attitude, how they can interact with people, their desire to be a part of an enterprise, those things I can't. They kind of people come hardwired, right? And so those things are really important to me.
Great. I'm really happy you mentioned that because in all my classes, I give my students group projects as a teamwork. And then at the end of the quarter, they have to present their projects again as a team. And usually my students, as soon as they hear like the first session of the class when I'm introducing the syllabus, as soon as they hear group project, they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, during COVID, I couldn't do that in my classes. I tried
Right.
to do that in one quarter and it was a mess. So I'm like, you should know the value of having the chance to work on a group project, on a team project in class, to get the experience, to get the knowledge, the social skills, the soft skills, so that you're more prepared for the job market. So that was a great point. Thank you so much. I'm gonna open the the mic to the audience for questions. I have some more, but I want to see how many questions we get, and then we can come back to my questions. So any questions?
Don't worry, it's not a hard one. Good to see you, Michelle.
Good to see you.
Congratulations on your success. So I know it takes a lot to build a small business. It's very difficult, lots of hard work. Is there any one factor that you would point to in the evolution of your company that it was the most important factor in developing a successful business?
That's a hard one. You said you were going to give me an easy question.
You got it.
Well, you know, I think one of the things that I really credit Jim, our founder, with is he instilled in us a sales culture. And we have, for the life of our company, a weekly sales meeting. And we really focus on new business. And I feel like that is, you know, that is the lifeblood. I mean, it's the lifeblood of many business enterprises, but in the consulting business, you know, you really need a pipeline, and you really need to be out building relationships. And it's not like you can put an ad on Amazon and sell inventory, right? It's the consultative sale is a longer sale. And so I think that that was just really built into our culture from day one. And what I would say is, you know, now that we're an almost 50-person enterprise, you know, it's harder to do some of that. It was sometimes easier as a small company. You'd get around a conference room table and be like, okay, you take your 5 leads and go. And, you know, now we have to have more structure and process, but it's still a part of our fabric. And I think it's served us well.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm a freelance copywriter and brand messaging specialist, and I'm starting to use AI more and more in my process. I'm wondering what you guys do with AI tools, if you welcome them, or if you have policies or limitations about using them, and how does that work?
Yeah, great question. And I feel like evolving weekly. But yes, our team uses a number of tools, often in ideation. Maybe you do that too, right? When you're kind of exploring and you're in that stage. I think it's a great tool in that. We're also using it in some of our business enterprises. Because we do a lot of government work, we respond to a lot of RFPs. And so we've actually built a custom GPT kind of to where we've stored a lot of our best pieces for RFPs, and that's helping us really become more efficient as we write responses, and allows more people to draw on sort of the collective wisdom inside the agency. And of course we're using closed environments for anything that we're doing. And then from a policy standpoint, you know, for sure we are transparent with clients. We're never using AI to generate a final deliverable of any kind. We're using it in the ideation stage, but we are real believers in the power of humans, and that it's essential in the creative process. So we're, you know, using it to help the humans do better work and do faster work.
Any other questions? We have one here.
So we're going through a tough time. Companies are laying off. The state right now is going through a major deficit. The city of Spokane has been trying to figure one out. What are some tips for a student who's like, I'm a junior currently, right?
Yep.
now, looking at the job market and trying to figure out, like, hey, are you guys willing to take a chance on somebody right out of school? And I've already talked to numerous places where a year ago they had tons of internships. Now they're like, you know, we can't really afford it, or they're laying off massive amount of employees. What are your tips to navigate that world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I too graduated in a time of recession, and I just think, um, I think we have to be open. You have to be open to where an opportunity might come, and a little more creative. And I think your point about internships is a good one because, companies are looking at areas to trim, right? And so it may be that you have to look at a volunteer opportunity to build your portfolio and get some experience. But I think being open to opportunities, and then also, my dad, when I was looking for a job, would always tell me, we create our own opportunities as well. And I think the idea, just what you're doing, of being out in community, connecting with professionals, having conversations, not being afraid to ask people for informational interviews, shows leadership. And I will just tell you that it's those students that stand out to us, right? It's the students who are proactive, who are out at events, who are walking up and introducing themselves, who are asking for opportunities. I just think those are the students who stand out. And I think in this age of, the big kind of computer HR systems where you don't talk to a human, you submit a resume and then your resume is reviewed by AI and then you never hear anything. It's just all the more reason to be out face to face with people wherever you can be.
Thank you so much. Wow, a question from Dean.
It's not a very good question because of that, but so you mentioned how the importance of interpersonal skills and interpersonal communication and the culture of the company, but you're also a statewide company.
Yeah.
Which means you're probably doing a lot of your interactions with each other over Zoom or Teams, or I don't know, is anybody still using Skype, whatever you're using,
Yeah.
right? So how do you intentionally maintain that deep level of interpersonal connection and skills
Yeah.
over a rectangle?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Fundamentally, we are in a people business. And so we do prioritize bringing our full team together twice a year in person. We have 5 people who are fully remote and live outside of the state. So it's not only the 2 offices where you have some built-in community and there's a lot of office-based activities and social activities that we do, but then we have this remote team as well. So we have found that you just have to prioritize getting everybody in person, and our people love that. It's a time that they look forward to, right? Because you're working with colleagues over Zoom all the time and over Slack and email. And it really makes a difference for people to be, in community with each other and breaking bread and having some fun together. So we're fortunate, I guess, in that we have been able to do that a couple times a year.
Hi, you had touched briefly on the ideation phase, and I just wanted to know a quick summary of that. It's something that I've been really interested in lately when creating things, just how it works for so many different companies and how you communicate with 2 different offices on bigger projects.
Yeah, we have a whole planning methodology that we use to start projects and plan projects, and it's a combination of things. We have what we call a context session where we bring a team together because our teams are always multidisciplinary, right? So we'll have a researcher, a media buyer, designers, strategists, and so everyone comes together and we do this session where we're outlining a client's goals, the audiences, the competitive landscape or the peer landscape, the political considerations, just anything, research that exists, research we need to do. And we're getting everyone up to speed in a facilitated, collaborative kind of session. We also use a tool called Mural. I don't know if you have used that, but we have found that for brainstorming and planning sessions where we're bringing people together over Zoom, that is a great collaboration tool. I will say one of the things I like about collaborating over Zoom is it flattens the room. And, in our company and all your companies, you have a combination of expressives and drivers, if you study social styles, and amiables and analytics, and you have the people who always talk, and you have the people who never talk. And so that is something in our collaboration processes that we're really intentional about drawing everybody out. And that's a good way to do it.
Thank you so much. We have a couple more.
Hi, thank you for being here. This is a super awesome presentation. Kind of similar to that last question and what you were speaking about, working in a social change space, how do you make sure you're incorporating those diverse perspectives within your own work and then with the clients that you're working with as well?
Yeah, it really is something that we're always having conversations about. It's actually part of our process when we're in the kind of context session stage. We're actively asking questions. Who should be at the table? What lived experience do we need to engage in this project that we don't have on our team? Who are the organizations that we might want to partner with or invite to participate? So those are some of the very earliest questions we're asking, because we recognize we never have all the experience. We never have all the insight. Our job is to facilitate bringing it in. So that's a large part of what we're doing, and we have a great team of people. We have we have a PhD in social change marketing who brings a great deal of expertise. We have a vice president of multicultural communications who has tremendous statewide relationships. He actually sits on our state board of health right now and is very well connected with many underrepresented communities. So we have people with knowledge and relationships that help us pull people in. And so we're never starting from scratch, but that's always a process that we're in.
Hi.
Hi.
Touching on your DEI reference earlier. So, in this changing political context that we're experiencing, you mentioned this. Sorry, my brain blanked for a second. You mentioned nothing about me without me.
Yeah.
Including these diverse perspectives, but you're also consulting with clients.
Yep.
And justifying diverse perspectives. How do you convince the holdouts, the people who have this staunch opposition against investing in these other perspectives? What's your go-to argument? How do you convince them on the long-term deliverables and the values, things like that?
Yeah. Well, I have a couple thoughts about that. First of all, people who really don't share those values probably are not hiring us. But there are, audiences, right, who we need to be mindful of. And I think one of the things that we're finding right now is that there's just a lot of misunderstanding, and that there are people who have grabbed onto a label of DEI who actually are misunderstanding what it is and why it matters. And so we always start with in a place of curiosity and in conversation. So we're educators. Really at the base of what we do. And so we're doing that listening, and we're drawing people out, and we're looking for what is their context? How are they coming to the conversation? Where is their common ground? What can we start to build from? And I think that's a principle in any kind of polarization, right? Political, ideology, religious, etc. Like those are some of the important principles: is staying curious, asking questions, staying in dialogue, right? As soon as we shut down and say you're wrong and we're right, we have no opportunity to educate. So we're really looking for what are the ways that we can stay in conversation and get to build common ground and reach understanding. And we may not agree. We're never all going to agree on anything, right? But I think that there's that big piece, and I think it's part of what universities are doing too, right? How do we bring people together and make it okay to disagree? and also to hold dear of like, that's one of the great things about democracy is that we don't all have to agree, that there's space for multitudes of ideas and beliefs. And that's common ground that we all share.
Thank you so much. And I guess we have time for one more question.
Hello. Thank
Hello.
you so much for your talk. It was very insightful. I'm curious, what business frameworks in branding would you use in personal branding to elevate like your personal brand, I guess?
I love it that you are thinking about your personal brand, because that's a thing. We all have one, and it's great to be intentional about it because you have one whether you're intentional or not, right? And so I think it's really the same exercise we go through with organizations. It really starts with, what are your values? What are your strengths? And it's about building from that, and it's about getting good at articulating what it is that you care about, how you show up, right? What I can expect, right? Brand is a relationship between, an entity and an audience, and you're communicating to me your brand promise. What can I rely on you for? What can I expect from you? And so I think that students who get really good about being clear about those values, about their strengths that they bring, and then they build the bridge. As an organization, here is what I can offer you. Here is my promise of value to you, organization. And I think if you can have that come through in your resume, in your cover letter, in your interviews. One of my pet peeves is people who show up in an interview and they really talk a lot about what they want from an employer, right? And trust me, like, I am ready to give a lot to employees. But in the interview, what I'm looking for is, what's your promise of value? How are you going to make my enterprise more successful, right? What can I rely on you for? What unique attributes are you going to bring to the company? So kudos to you. You're on the right track.
Well, as I said, we may walk away from tonight with lots of different thoughts, but one of those is developing our own personal brand. So thank you for ending it that way. Do we have a little token of our appreciation from the Eagles to give to our alumna? Who's going to present that?
Oh, coming. Lorna is bringing it.
Okay.
This
is a gift from the Alumni Association.
Thank you. Wow. Love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And there is one coming up from the School of Business.
Yeah. Feels like a good
We
one.
have a couple here. So logistically, for your trophy wall.
Oh, wow.
Michelle.
Oh, amazing. We're going to do a picture?
Yeah, we'd like a little pic.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up here.
Thank you. It's
All right,
beautiful.
so
Beautiful.
one more round of applause for Michelle Hege.
Thank you.
Michelle, will you be available here in the next few minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to meet
okay.
people.
Well, that was an hour well spent by me, for me, and I hope that you feel the same way. I just wanted to say that we do have this recorded, and Nick, this will be ready in about a week. Is that right? Up on YouTube at the Business School YouTube channel. Now's the time for the food, and I don't know if it's out. I hope so. I just wanted to remind you a couple things. For students, I know you don't have these things. This is called a business card. But you might want to use something like that to introduce yourself to the many community members, community leaders who are in the audience right now, and just sort of talk about the process that, start the process that Michelle has touched on in her talk. Second of all, I think on all your seats, you have a little flyer about our next and final program for the year. And we're very happy to have Steve Helmbrecht, co-founder of Treasury 4, Spokane's big fintech company. Steve's in the audience right now. You want to wave your hand, Steve? And he'll be with us May 21. So I don't miss that. I've heard Steve speak before about what's going on. It's quite a story. So thank you, everyone, for attending. And may we walk out of here with more knowledge about personal brands and all the things that DH does so well. So the food is ready. Is that right, Chris? All right, right up at the front, folks. Thank you so much. We'll see you again in May.